All right, so I got a story here for you guys that honestly shouldn't be that surprising, but is still pretty wild just considering the brazen nature of some of these corrupt dealings that the Trump family has been engaging with over the last couple of years. So we're going to read through this New York Times article. This one is specifically centering around another Middle Eastern country that Trump has gotten himself involved in. They're talking about the country of Oman, which basically sits like slightly to the right of Yemen and under Saudi Arabia, which is another country where obviously Donald Trump has been, engaging in just rampant corruption with, and also continuing to sell them weapons and, pushing for a strengthening of that alliance with the brutal dictatorship under Mohammed bin Salman's rule. And so this is just the latest in a long string of events that the Trump administration or the Trump family has been engaging with. So let's just go ahead and get into some of the details here from the New York Times. They say Trump family's newest partner, Middle Eastern governments. So what are they talking about here? They say when former President Donald J. Trump returned briefly last week to his office at Trump Tower in New York, he was joined by his son Eric Trump and the top executive of a Saudi Arabian real estate company to sign a deal that creates a new conflict of interest questions for his just launched presidential campaign. They say the deal is with a Saudi real estate company which intends to build a Trump-branded hotel, villas, and golf courses as part of a $4 billion real estate project in Oman. And the agreement continues a practice that has been popular for the Trump family business until Mr. Trump was elected president, selling branding rights to an overseas project in exchange for a generous licensing fee. They say, but what makes this project unusual and is sure to intensify the questions over this newest transaction is that by teaming up with the Saudi company, Mr. Trump is also becoming part of a project backed by the government of Oman itself. They say the deal leaves Mr. Trump as a former president hoping to win the White House again, effectively with a foreign power partner that has complex relations with the United States, including its role to try to end the war in Yemen and other important foreign policy agenda items for Washington. Not exactly sure specifically what they mean by this framing here. Complex relations with the United States, including in its role in trying to end the war in Yemen. I hope they're not talking about the United States' role in trying to end the war in Yemen, because that's something we could have already done a long time ago, right? I mean, we effectively, as Ro Khanna pointed out just a couple weeks ago when he was trying to push for a severing or at least a changing in the relationship that we have with Saudi Arabia, which has been engaging in this offensive war in Yemen, we basically could ground their air force tomorrow if we wanted to. I mean, we are providing them with weapon support, with military support, logistical support, intelligence support. They literally could not operate if it wasn't for this backing by the United States. So the idea that like mildly trying to suggest maybe having a temporary ceasefire that may or may not last, that's like backed by the UN, it's like, sure, that's a good step in the right direction, I guess, in terms of just mitigating some of the most brutal and catastrophic consequences of this war, which again has left hundreds of thousands of innocent men, women, and children dead. And as the Saudis continue their ongoing blockade, it's like you're really not doing much there. So kind of bizarre framing to say that we're trying to end the war in Yemen when it's something we could have done a long time ago. But they finish off here saying that the deal Mr. Trump signed was with Dar Al Arkan, the Saudi-based real estate company that is leading the project in collaboration with the government of Oman, which owns the land. It is the second deal signed recently between Mr. Trump and his family that has direct financial ties to a Middle Eastern government. So they go on to point out some of these other corrupt business dealings that Trump's family has been engaging with. Obviously, we have the Live Golf Tournament, which is something that Trump has presumably made potentially hundreds of millions of dollars, or at least millions and millions of dollars off of this deal. And basically, he came out and started bashing the PGA Tour and backing this Live Golf Tournament, and he's letting them use their his properties and all of that stuff, and basically just promoting this event, which is essentially at the end of the day just sports washing, or in other words, whitewashing the reputation of the government of Saudi Arabia and trying to normalize them in other countries, etc. And so this was just one deal that we had recently. We also had this one, which was actually back under the Trump administration itself, where they say Saudi-funded lobbyists paid for 500 rooms at Trump's hotel after the 2016 election. So this is something that people have been pointing out in terms of potentially something that Trump could or should have been impeached over, basically just brazen violations of the emoluments clause. You could have tried to go after him on this instead of like the Russiagate stuff, but this is something that he just ended up getting away with completely. We also had this one, which I covered on this channel just a couple of months ago, back from April of this year. The son-in-law of Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, got literally a $2 billion handout from the Saudi government into his a quote unquote investment firm. Okay. And the funniest part about this was that even the Saudi advisors, their financial people, were coming out and saying this $2 billion investment is a dog shit investment. Okay. This guy does not have the qualifications. He doesn't have, the ability to actually make this a profitable investment. So they knew that it was a bad deal, but they just decided to give him the money anyways. Why? Because maybe they're looking for something other than, direct financial rewards or payouts from joining in Jared Kushner's investment firm. Maybe, not to be too conspiratorial here, but maybe they actually just want political sway and political influence in a family that could potentially retake the White House and be directly involved in foreign policy within the Middle East, or directly involved in continuing the relationship that we have with Saudi Arabia. Just a guess there, obviously, but we have this one as well, which this is just sort of more general in terms of like Republican ties to the Saudi government. So here from Responsible Statecraft, they had a great breakdown on this. They say Saudi lobbyist oversees millions in dark money GOP campaign donations. So essentially just, again, influence peddling, trying to gain some sort of leverage over the Republican Party. Now, keep in mind, it's not as if the Democratic Party or that Joe Biden is somehow like principally against the government of Saudi Arabia, or, that he's somehow standing up to Mohammed bin Salman or any of these other governments within the Middle East, right? He's definitely not doing that. In fact, he's doing the exact opposite of that. He's been groveling at the feet of Mohammed bin Salman, begging him to release more oil into the global markets to try to tamp down gas prices. And Mohammed bin Salman has basically been, returning the favor by screwing him at every single chance that he gets. We also had the Joe Biden administration, which I covered on this channel again just a couple days ago, completely unnecessarily decided to give Mohammed bin Salman immunity from the ongoing civil case that was brought against him for butchering and dismembering the Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi just a couple years ago. And so, it's not as if like this is something that is going to, all of this corruption that we're talking about here, whether it's with Oman, whether it's with Saudi Arabia, or even with another country like Israel, for example. It's not as if like these payoffs are going to like dramatically change U.S. foreign policy within the Middle East, or it's going to dramatically change our relationship with Saudi Arabia. This is pretty much just a bipartisan thing. We are just always going to suck up to these dictators, whether it's Mohammed bin Salman or whether it's even like apartheid Israel as well. We are always going to suck up to these governments because they just happen to be slightly more on our side when it comes to, economic concerns, when it comes to, geopolitical concerns in the region. We've just decided it's okay to support and to fund and to arm these brutal dictatorships in their ongoing genocides because, maybe not, we'll get some cheaper oil out of them, right? So that's basically the relationship that Democrats and Republicans overwhelmingly support. And I'm not even, necessarily sure that, funneling a couple $1 billion to Jared Kushner is going to somehow like reap dramatically better rewards than you're already getting under Joe Biden, for example, or, the next Democratic nominee, whoever that might be at the end of the day. But it definitely could have some impact, right? You could see Donald Trump be much more aggressively or hawkishly in favor of whatever Saudi Arabia wants to do militarily and, geopolitically and diplomatically, etc. So, there's definitely going to be some sort of an effect on this, some sort of an influence in terms of Donald Trump's calculations, especially considering that Donald Trump is a guy who is literally, this is just the way he operates, right? This is how he's operated his entire life, is just a transactional experience, right? This is not a guy who like stands on any principles in any way whatsoever. Whatever makes him more money, whatever gives him more power, that's the direction that he's going to go. So there could be definitely some negative outcomes from this, specifically I would think relating to the ongoing or potential ongoing war in Yemen. That could have dramatically bad consequences. But in terms of this deal in Oman specifically, this is just, again, brazen corruption. If we actually lived in any country whatsoever that pretended to care about holding the most powerful elites within our country actually accountable for their brazen crimes and corruption, then this would be something which Donald Trump could get arrested for, right? He's going to be potentially going back to the White House. He's making deals basically directly with foreign governments, and obviously that is going to somewhat affect his ability to be neutral or give an honest analysis when it comes to our foreign policy relating to those countries. So this is shit that should just be easy, no underlying real deeper thought required. This should just be considered brazenly illegal, right? But obviously we live in the United States, and this is just stuff that is, I guess, considered somewhat normal and acceptable, and something that a potential future president can do and can just get away with without any real consequences whatsoever. We've all seen how many things that Donald Trump has been able to get away with. Now, he does have some investigations that are still on the table, which could end up catching up to him. But honestly, I have my doubts on a lot of those, even though they are like slam dunk cases in many ways. It still seems like, he's going to wriggle his way out of it, as he, seems to always do and has done historically. But the other thing that this made me think of is the just brazen hypocrisy coming from Republicans when it comes to issues of corruption, right? Because me, as an outside observer, right, not as a like direct partisan actor or a member of Congress or something like that with political ties to either party, right, I'm able to objectively look at this, right, as I think most people are, and just say, I don't like corruption when Democrats do it. I don't like corruption when Republicans do it. I think it should all be illegal. I think that most politicians that are elected in our government right now should be considered criminals. I mean, we have effectively legalized a system of bribery in this country to the effect that now we essentially have a government that is 100% captured and controlled and dictated by, the interests of corporate America, the military-industrial complex, etc. And so, I mean, this is all shit that if you have a principled stance on it, well, then you would get money out of politics, right? You wouldn't even have even the potential for foreign governments to lobby our political system in this way, because you wouldn't have lobbying of any sorts, right? You wouldn't let Saudi Arabia lobby our government. You wouldn't let Israel lobby our government. You also wouldn't let the billionaire and millionaire class or corporate America or the military-industrial complex. You also wouldn't let them lobby our government, obviously, right? So, I mean, that's just like what you would, what a principled stance on an issue like this would actually be. And then also beyond that, beyond just changing our laws and the way that we have campaign finance in this country, you could go a step further and say, okay, we're going to make this illegal, and anybody who engages with foreign corrupt deals like this, they would go to prison. And so this reminded me that a couple of days ago, back on November 17th, now that the GOP is back in control of the House of Representatives, they basically just announced that they're going to be investigating Biden and I guess his ties with Hunter Biden and his position on this Ukrainian energy company, and basically trying to investigate and prove the case that he was somehow directly benefiting from this, or I don't know, maybe getting kickbacks from that deal. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, here's my point, right? Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, these people are massively corrupt. Obviously, that shouldn't even need to be said. Okay, again, go back to my previous statement, right? I think pretty much the majority, or maybe even, more than just a slim majority of our political representatives within our government, they are criminals. They're all criminals. They're all corrupt. They all engage in insider trading. They're all, taking bribes from corporate America, etc. So we all understand that, right? But here's the, kicker here, I guess, right? It's like you just announced on like almost day one, before you've even really taken control of the House of Representatives, and you're saying you're going to investigate the Biden family over, supposed corruption within Ukraine from a couple of years ago. And it's like, sure, I might grant you that maybe all of these allegations are true. And if so, maybe Joe Biden should be, in prison for that. Maybe he should be prosecuted for that or get a trial for that, right? 100%. But how do you come forward with a case like this? How do you try to bring a case like this, trying to insinuate that Joe Biden is corrupt because his son was trading on his name and maybe having some sort of a political sway or influence on Joe Biden's thoughts and his foreign policy decisions, and you're tying all of these, knots together and trying to prove a through line there that Joe Biden was benefiting from this, or he was engaging in direct corruption with foreign governments, but then you just completely ignore that the presumed leader of your party, I guess, unless Ron DeSantis wants to get in here and, shake things up and take him on in a direct war in the 2024 primary, but you're talking about the face of your party, the guy who was just president for 4 years, and you're just not even going to talk about any of those different other things that we just went through, right? I mean, whether it's his, hotels having Saudi Arabian lobbyists coming in and paying thousands and thousands of dollars for their rooms, way overcharging them, whether it's his new deal with the government of Oman. I mean, that's just like a direct conflict of interest there, right? I mean, like, you could try to pull or connect the dots between, Joe Biden and this Ukrainian energy company, but like, this is pretty easy to analyze, right? It's like, they're not even hiding it. This is just stuff that's happening out in the open. He's having all of these business ties, and that doesn't even get into a lot of the other ties with like Ivanka and her role in, pushing her business priorities with deals with other governments around the world, and trading on her name and trading on the fact that her dad was the president. I mean, this was the entire Trump family. This was the entire Trump administration was doing this, and you're just not even going to talk about that. I mean, obviously not going to launch an investigation into it, but not even mention it, not even draw comparisons here. I mean, when you hear conservatives talk about the Hunter Biden corruption stories and all of that, that, they are so furious. They are up in arms. They think this is the potential biggest story in the country, while you're just completely ignoring the fact that this is rampantly going on in your own party, while on your own side right now, and they're not even hiding it. So, I mean, I guess that's my main takeaway here is it's, again, not a surprising story. Doubt that anybody watching my channel is going to be shocked that, oh, Donald Trump, he did something, corrupt again. I mean, whoop-de-fucking-do. He does that on an average Tuesday. But, the real takeaway from this is that, number one, how is this shit even legal? In any functioning, uncorrupted society, this shit would not be legal, and it would be something that he, could be prosecuted for. But then on top of that, the second takeaway is that we are about to enter an era in, the next couple of years as Republicans take back the House, where they are going to be doing investigation after investigation after investigation into Joe Biden for probably a billion different things, half of which are going to be completely made up, nonsense conspiracy theories, and half of which may have some underlying truth to them. But we're going to enter this period of increased partisanship, increased infighting within our government that is essentially just going to be a massive, massive distraction from the underlying reality that our entire government, that our entire political system is based on the underlying premise and foundation of rampant corruption that we have just effectively legalized.
Everyone is saying good politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying